From the moment I could understand words, my family called me the curse. My mother whispered it under her breath when I dropped a glass. My father barked it when his car wouldn't start. My siblings used it like a nickname. I believed them for years, thinking maybe I really was cursed. But when I turned 15, I started noticing something strange. Everything bad that happened was always traced back to me, no matter what. If Caleb failed the test, it was because I walked past his room. If Isolde broke up with her boyfriend, it was because I existed in the same house. That's when I realized this wasn't about bad luck. This was about them needing someone to blame for everything wrong in their perfect little world. So I started keeping receipts. Every harsh word, every unfair punishment, every time they made me the scapegoat. I wrote it all down in journals they didn't know I was keeping. Those tiny, furious notes would become my arsenal later. My brother Caleb was the golden one in our family. He could crash the family car, and somehow my mom would still hug him and say, "At least you're safe." But if I left a light on by accident, I got screamed out for wasting money we don't have because of your curse. Watching the difference in treatment was like being in a rigged game show where the host already knew the winner. Caleb got brand new clothes for school, while I wore hand-me-downs from neighbors. He got driving lessons and a car for his 16th birthday. I got a lecture about how I should be grateful for the roof over my head. When he brought home bad grades, they hired him a tutor. When I brought home straight A's, they said I was probably cheating somehow. The double standard was so obvious it hurt. But I kept documenting it all in my journals, writing down every single unfair moment. I was building evidence, though I didn't know what I'd use it for yet. At 16, I wasn't allowed to go to parties, but Caleb could throw them whenever he wanted. One Friday night, his party completely trashed our house. Broken vases, red wine stains on the white carpet, neighbors calling the cops about noise. The damage was thousands of dollars. But guess who got blamed? Me. My mom swore she saw me wandering suspiciously near the liquor cabinet, even though I'd been locked in my room studying all night. She claimed I must have somehow influenced the party kids to be destructive. My dad nodded along, saying my negative energy probably made everyone act out. They grounded me for a month, while Caleb got a gentle talking to about choosing better friends. I realized then that in their twisted story, I wasn't just the villain. I was the magical plot device that made everything go wrong. That night, I wrote in my journal until my hand cramped, documenting every detail of their lies. At a family dinner when I was 17, my father announced that Caleb and my sister Isolde would inherit everything when he died. The house, the business, the savings accounts, all of it would go to them. I wasn't shocked by the news, but it stung to hear him say I'd probably waste it or curse it anyway, so why bother? The whole table laughed at his joke. I laughed too, forcing a smile, but inside I made a quiet vow. I would never be left begging for scraps from these people. What they didn't know was that inheritance papers can be challenged in court. I started researching online, learning about legal loopholes and family law. I discovered that favoritism in wills could be contested, especially if there was proof of emotional abuse or family manipulation. I printed out articles and hid them in my room, studying them like textbooks. Knowledge was power, and I was going to need all the power I could get. On my 18th birthday, I came downstairs expecting at least a happy birthday from someone. Instead, I found an empty kitchen. No cake, no presents, no family members around. Just a note taped to the refrigerator in my mother's handwriting. Stop expecting blessings you don't deserve. Cursed children should be grateful for basic necessities. I stood there holding that note, and for the first time, I didn't cry. Instead, I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. I went back upstairs and pulled out every journal I'd been writing in for 3 years. I tore out every page documenting their abuse and laid them on my bedroom floor like puzzle pieces. For the first time, I wasn't journaling to cope with the pain. I was building evidence for something bigger. Looking at all those pages spread out, I could see the pattern of their cruelty written in black ink. They had made me their scapegoat for so long, they didn't even realize they were creating a paper trail. Just before you continue to watch, please subscribe to this channel and like this video. It would encourage and help us keep creating amazing content for you. All right, back to the story. The only blessing I ever gave myself was getting into college with scholarships they said I'd never get without cheating. I packed my few belongings and moved across the state, feeling silence like freedom for the first time in my life. No more whispered insults, no more being blamed for every small disaster. But my family wasn't done torturing me. They'd call my dorm room just to tell me how much better Caleb and Isolde were doing without me around, how the house felt lighter and more blessed since I left. They thought these calls would keep me jealous and desperate for their approval. Instead, I learned that distance was the first tool of revenge. Each cruel call gave me more material to work with. I started recording them on my laptop, saving every voicemail that proved their emotional abuse. They were building my case against them without even knowing it. When my grandmother died during my sophomore year, my mom called with specific instructions. Don't embarrass us at the funeral. Actually, maybe you shouldn't come at all. She meant it as an order, not a suggestion. But I showed up anyway, wearing the only black dress I owned from a thrift store. People whispered when I walked into the church, but not about me. They were whispering about Caleb, who was drunk in the corner at 10 a.m., and Isolde, who was screaming at her boyfriend in the parking lot. My family's perfect facade was cracking in public, and I realized something important. I didn't need to actively ruin them. They were already doing it to themselves with their selfishness and lack of self-control. I just needed to help the cracks widen a little bit. Standing at my grandmother's grave, I made a promise to her memory. I would expose the truth about what this family really was behind closed doors. My parents were obsessed with a yearly blessing ritual at our church, where the pastor would lay hands on the whole family. They'd line up like royalty, soaking up the attention and prayers. That summer when I was home from college, I decided to participate. I walked up and stood beside them. During the ceremony, the pastor hesitated when he saw me, then said loudly, "The blessing will not pass through a family divided by hatred." My parents and siblings glared at me like I'd poisoned the entire room with my presence. But I noticed something interesting. The congregation wasn't looking at me with judgment. They were looking at my family's faces, seeing the pure hatred they couldn't hide. Several church members approached me afterwards, asking if I was okay at home. Seeds of doubt about my family's perfect image had been planted in front of 50 witnesses. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people see the truth. During my junior year of college, I got an email from my dad with the subject line, "Final Warning." The message was short and brutal. "Do not contact us unless someone is dying. You're officially cut off from this family. We're done supporting your curse." He thought cutting me off would destroy me, financially and emotionally. Instead, it freed me completely. I had been working part-time jobs and saving money anyway, so I didn't need their support. But I also did something strategic. I created a new email account and began quietly following their social media, their business activities, and their community involvement. I started collecting screenshots of their lies and contradictions. If I was going to be their curse, I wanted to make sure they felt the full weight of it when the time was right. I began building a digital file that would make their public image crumble. 3 years later, Isolde got engaged to a lawyer named Marcus. She sent me a pity invitation to the wedding with a handwritten note. "Please don't cause any drama, just sit quietly in the back." I showed up in a simple black dress, bringing a gift wrapped in silver paper. Inside the box was a USB drive containing screenshots of Marcus's active dating profiles and text conversations with other women. I didn't hand it directly to Isolde. Instead, I slipped it into her future mother-in-law's purse during cocktail hour. I sat quietly through the ceremony, watching Marcus make vows about faithfulness and love. By the time dinner was served, the mother-in-law had found the USB drive and shared the contents with several key family members. The reception turned into a war zone of accusations and crying. I left quietly before dessert was served, knowing that Isolde's perfect day had become her worst nightmare. After college, Caleb launched his own real estate company, branding himself as a self-made entrepreneur in all his marketing materials. He gave interviews to local newspapers about his success story, never mentioning the family money that funded his start. But I had kept documentation of everything, including bank records I'd photographed years earlier. I discovered he had siphoned money from our grandmother's estate before she died, using her dementia to get her to sign papers. I sent anonymous tips with evidence to a local investigative journalist. A week later, the headline read, Golden Child, Tarnished Empire, Local Realtor Under Investigation for Elder Fraud. When Caleb called me, his voice was shaking with panic. "Did you do this to me?" he demanded. I said nothing and hung up. Sometimes silence is the loudest confession of all. His business started losing clients immediately as the story spread through social media. My mother finally called me after 3 years of silence. Her voice sounded brittle, like glass about to shatter completely. "You've ruined your brother's future with your lies," she hissed into the phone. "How could you be so vindictive toward your own family?" I let her rant for several minutes about loyalty and family bonds. Then I said calmly, "That's funny, Mom. I thought I was the family curse. Maybe you should have kept me closer so you could control the damage." I hung up before she could respond. I had waited my entire life to hear that satisfying click of the phone, ending our conversation on my terms. She called back immediately, but I had already blocked her number. The curse was finally working in reverse, and they were starting to feel what it was like to be powerless against forces they couldn't control or manipulate. Digging deeper into my family's finances, I found something much worse than Caleb's fraud. My father's construction company had been laundering money through Caleb's real estate firm for years. That explained why Caleb got bailed out so quickly after every mistake. He wasn't just the golden child, he was a crucial part of their criminal operation. Shell companies, fake contracts, offshore accounts, the whole setup. Suddenly, everything made sense. I wasn't their curse at all. I was their cover story. They needed someone to throw shade on while they built their empire in the dark, someone to distract attention from their illegal activities. All those years of making me the scapegoat weren't just emotional abuse, they were calculated misdirection. I wasn't going to expose them to the authorities yet. I wanted to gather more evidence and wait for the perfect moment. Sometimes the best revenge is patience. I decided to visit home for the first time in 4 years, showing up unannounced on a Sunday morning. My mother nearly fainted when she opened the door and saw me standing there with a bright smile. The house looked different, smaller somehow, and colder. Family photos had been rearranged to exclude me completely, as if I had never existed. My father came downstairs and barked, "Why are you here? We told you to stay away." I smiled sweetly and said, "Just wanted to see if the family curse still fits, or if you found a new scapegoat." His silence was much louder than any yelling could have been. I walked through the house like I owned it, taking mental notes of everything that had changed. They followed me nervously, clearly afraid of what I might do or say. The power dynamic had completely shifted, and we all knew it. While my parents slept that night, I did some exploring. In the basement, behind stacks of old Christmas decorations, I found a locked filing cabinet. Using skills I'd learned from YouTube videos, I picked the lock easily. Inside were fake invoices, documents showing offshore bank accounts, and photographs of my father with men I didn't recognize. Some photos were taken at expensive restaurants, others at what looked like private meetings. My hands shook as I used my phone to photograph everything. This wasn't just family dysfunction or petty fraud. This was organized crime, money laundering on a massive scale. I found records showing millions of dollars flowing through fake construction projects and phantom real estate deals. The scope was breathtaking and terrifying. I was holding evidence that could send my father to prison for decades. The question was, did I have the courage to use it? I confided in my old college roommate, Sarah, who now worked at a prestigious law firm in the city. She looked through the photographs I'd taken and went completely pale. "Elara, this isn't just fraud," she whispered. "This is federal crime territory. RICO Act violations, money laundering, probably tax evasion. Your family could go to prison for life." I felt sick hearing it confirmed. Part of me wanted to walk away and pretend I'd never found the evidence. But another part of me, the part that remembered being called a curse for 18 years, the part that remembered having no birthday cake, the part that remembered being blamed for everything, wanted justice. Sarah asked quietly, "Are you ready to bring down your entire family?" I stared at the ceiling of her office for a long moment. Then I nodded. My silence was my answer, but it spoke volumes about my decision. I invited my family to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in town, telling them it was my treat. They were suspicious, but came anyway, probably thinking I wanted to apologize or beg for forgiveness. We ordered appetizers and made small talk about the weather.
Then, halfway through the main course, I slid a manila envelope across the table. "I know everything," I said simply. My father's face drained of all color. My mother's hand started trembling so badly she dropped her fork. Caleb tried to laugh nervously, but his eyes darted around like a trapped animal. Isolde just stared at the envelope like it might explode. The power shift was immediate and obvious. For the first time in my life, I was the one holding all the cards. I was the one with the power to destroy lives with a single decision. The family curse had finally learned how to bite back. My father tried desperately to bargain with me. His voice became almost kind, a tone I'd never heard him use before. "We can cut you into the business, Elara. You'll never have to work again. You can have everything you ever wanted." He was offering me millions of dollars to stay quiet. For a brief second, I could see the man he might have been if he'd chosen a different path in life. But then I remembered the 18-year-old girl standing in an empty kitchen, holding a note that told her she didn't deserve birthday wishes. I remember every time they blamed me for their failures. I remembered being called a curse until I believed it myself. "I don't want a share of your dirty money, Dad. I want the whole blessed empire to come crashing down." His face hardened again, showing me the cold man I'd always known. The brief glimpse of humanity disappeared completely. Isolde called me privately the next morning, her voice desperate and pleading. "Elara, please reconsider what you're doing. We can fix this whole situation together. I'll side with you against Dad and Caleb if that's what it takes. Just don't destroy everything we've worked for." I almost believed her emotional appeal, until I checked social media an hour later. There she was, posting smiling brunch photos with Caleb and our parents, all of them laughing and looking carefree. The caption read, "Family is everything. Blessed to have these amazing people in my life." She wasn't calling to genuinely make amends with me. She was calling to manipulate me into protecting them while maintaining her perfect image online. It was the same old pattern of lies and manipulation I'd grown up with. That brunch photo sealed their fate along with the rest of them. There would be no mercy for any of them. I uploaded everything to a secure cloud server and sent anonymous links to the FBI, IRS, and 3 major investigative news outlets. Then I sat back in my apartment and waited for the storm to begin. I didn't have to wait long. The first story broke within 48 hours. Local construction dynasty under federal investigation for money laundering. My phone started buzzing constantly, with calls from relatives, old neighbors, and complete strangers who had seen the news. Extended family members who had always favored my siblings were suddenly trying to contact me, probably hoping I had inside information. The local newspaper ran a follow-up story about the family's charitable facade hiding criminal activity. My parents' church even issued a statement distancing themselves from the scandal. I watched it all unfold from my quiet apartment, sipping coffee and scrolling through headlines about my family's downfall.
The fallout happened faster than I had expected. Caleb's real estate company was immediately shut down by federal agents. My father's construction business had all its assets frozen while investigators combed through decades of records. My mother's charity, which I discovered was just another front for laundering money, was exposed in a devastating exposé. Isolde's engagement was called off when Marcus realized marrying into the family would destroy his legal career. They all turned on each other like desperate animals fighting over scraps. Caleb blamed Dad for dragging him into the scheme. Dad blamed Caleb for being sloppy with the records. Mom blamed everyone for not being more careful. Isolde tried to distance herself, claiming she knew nothing. I watched from the sidelines as they destroyed each other with accusations and betrayals. The blessed family was eating itself alive, and I didn't have to lift another finger. One evening, there was a soft knock on my apartment door. When I looked through the peephole, I saw Caleb standing in the hallway. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. I opened the door, and he asked in a broken voice, "Why did you do this to us, Elara? We're family." His voice cracked on the word family, and for a moment he looked like the little boy I used to play with before everything went wrong. I looked at him calmly and said, "You taught me I was the family curse, Caleb, so I became the best curse I could be." He started crying then, real tears streaming down his face. I watched him fall apart for a few seconds, then gently close the door.
I heard him sobbing in the hallway for 10 minutes before he finally left. It should have felt like victory, but mostly it just felt like the end of something that had been dying for years. My family tried to control the narrative by going public with their sob story. They appeared on local TV claiming to be victims of a vindictive smear campaign by a disturbed family member. But the federal documents spoke much louder than their tears and lies. Every interview they gave just made them look more guilty and desperate. Neighbors who had once envied their success now crossed the street to avoid them. Former friends stopped returning their calls. The local country club revoked their membership. Their church asked them not to attend services until the legal issues were resolved. I didn't need to say a single word publicly. The evidence was speaking for itself, and their attempts to play victims only made them look more pathetic. I had learned the most powerful lesson of all. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting the truth come to light. Months passed quietly. My father was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Caleb disappeared completely, probably living under a fake name somewhere far away. Isolde moved to another state and changed her last name, trying to escape the family shame. My mother called me one final time, from an unknown number. Her voice was completely hollow when she asked, "Are you happy now, Elara? Was destroying your own family worth it?" I didn't answer her question directly. Instead, I let her sit in the same kind of silence she had given me for 18 years. After a long pause, I simply said, "Goodbye, Mom," and hung up. She didn't call back. The curse had finally run its course, and there was nothing left to say between us. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. People online ask me constantly if I regret destroying my own family. They want to know if revenge was worth the price I paid. Here's my honest answer. They stopped being my family the day they decided I was their curse instead of their daughter. You can't destroy something that was already rotten from the inside. I didn't ruin a blessed family. I exposed the truth about parasites who built their success on lies, crime, and emotional abuse. For the first time in my life, I'm completely free from their toxicity. I have real friends now, people who value me for who I am. I'm building a life based on truth instead of lies. The girl who was once called a curse has finally found her own blessings. And unlike theirs, mine are built on honesty and genuine relationships. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is cutting off the people who taught you to hate yourself. I'm finally free. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also check out other videos on the channel. We've got more interesting stories for you.